All right, let's just jump right into this explainer and kick things off with a massive number that shows just how colossal this brand really is today. We're looking at the totally fascinating and honestly incredibly unlikely story behind a beverage that basically invented an entirely new global product category from scratch.
7.9 billion. Yeah, you heard that right. That is the number of cans this company sells every single year across 170 different countries. To really put that crazy number into perspective, that means there's literally more than one can sold annually for every single person currently living on the planet. It's an absolute juggernaut, you know? Loved by drowsy office workers and exam-cramming college students everywhere.
But the real hook of this whole story is, how on earth did a poor duck farmer actually build this? The ultimate underdog here is a guy named Chaleo Yoovidhya. Chaleo was born to poor Chinese immigrants in the rural Thai province of Pijit. He grew up with very little formal education, spending his early days farming ducks and selling fruit literally just to help his family scrape by. Eventually, he packed up and moved to the bustling capital city of Bangkok to try and carve out a better life. And even after moving, he worked all sorts of odd jobs, like driving a bus, before finally trusting his gut and starting his own company, TC Pharmaceutical Industries, where he imported and produced antibiotics and cosmetics.
Which brings us to brewing the perfect formula, going from pharmaceuticals to energy.
So Chaleo ends up spotting this massive gap in the market. Back then, energy drinks were consumed strictly out of necessity, and boy, they tasted like it. They had this very distinctive, medicinal, almost syrupy flavor. So in 1976, he decided to mix things up and blend an interesting, sweet, syrupy concoction he named Kraton Dang. And what does that translate to in English? Yep, you guessed it, Red Bull.
And when he first launched this drink, it wasn't some overnight success, largely because he didn't even try to pitch it to Bangkok's wealthy elite. Instead, he rolled out what was honestly a genius grassroots marketing playbook. First off, he targeted provincial blue-collar workers. He pitched his sweet syrup as this incredible stimulant for speed, endurance, and concentration, which was exactly what exhausted day laborers desperately needed. Next, he built a massive foothold by personally handing out free samples directly to weary long-haul truck drivers. And finally, to really seal the deal, he started sponsoring local Thai boxing matches, totally cementing the brand right into the heart of working-class culture.
And the logo he designed for those boxing sponsorships, it definitely wasn't just some random doodle. Every single piece had a very specific purpose. You've got the two charging bulls representing pure power, then the color red, which signifies perseverance, and of course, that bright sun backdrop symbolizing energy. He completely succeeded in creating a lasting, visceral association between his drink and these deeply powerful visual elements.
All right, moving on to a global partnership, East meets West.
So let's fast forward to 1982, where we meet a guy from the complete opposite side of the globe. On one hand, we've got Chaleo, this reclusive Thai pharmaceutical founder who almost never gave interviews. And on the other, we have Dietrich Mateschitz, a traveling Austrian sales and marketing executive who was getting incredibly bored of just peddling toothpaste and shampoo. Well, in 1982, Dietrich takes a business trip to Thailand, and he is absolutely blown away when a local bottle of Kraton Dang magically and completely cures his awful jet lag. He was instantly hooked.
Then, shortly after that trip to Thailand, Dietrich is hanging out in Hong Kong, and he just happens to read a news article containing a pretty staggering fact. An energy drink brand named Lipovitten was actually Japan's greatest taxpayer. I mean, wow, it hit him like a lightning bolt. Dietrich suddenly realized the massive, totally untapped potential of energy drinks in the Western world, where, at the time, literally nothing like this even existed yet.
So Dietrich doesn't waste any time. He immediately quits his job, tracks down a very reluctant Chaleo, and somehow convinces him to take this massive leap of faith. They each threw down $500,000 to officially found the Red Bull Company in 1984. And they agreed to a highly specific equity split. 49% for Dietrich, 49% for Chaleo, and that final 2% going to Chaleo's eldest son, Chaleo.
Which leads us perfectly into ignoring the haters and surviving the disastrous focus groups. Now, you might think it was all smooth sailing once the company was formed, right? Well, actually, their initial market research was an absolute nightmare. The visceral feedback they got from trial groups prepping for the Western launch was just brutal. Consumers literally said it tasted disgusting. They complained about this weird, sticky feeling in their mouth. They said it was way too unhealthy, and they thought both the logo and the brand name were totally unappealing. The overwhelming, aggressive recommendation from the so-called experts was super simple: abort the mission. Red Bull was doomed to fail.
But Dietrich? He trusted his gut. Over the next couple of years, he meticulously tweaked and refined the product for Western palates. Between 1985 and 1986, he carbonated the drink to make it feel a bit more premium, and he swapped out that old pharmacy-style bottle for the iconic slim silver can we all know today. Finally, in 1987, Red Bull was officially released in the Austrian market, and by 1988, they sold 1.2 million boxes. Just absolutely explosive success.
Next up, selling a lifestyle, adrenaline, energy, and adventure.
To change the public's mind so drastically, Dietrich realized that a completely new product required a completely novel approach to advertising. I mean, instead of spending millions fighting for mainstream TV commercial airtime, he leaned hard into his own passion, extreme sports. We're talking sponsoring Formula One, snowboarding, and mountain biking, creating their own crazy Flugtag flying competitions, and oh yeah, even funding Felix Baumgartner's literal jump from the stratosphere. By plastering those charging bulls everywhere the blood was pumping, they weren't just selling a beverage anymore, they were selling a totally cool, aspirational lifestyle. So let's look at this billion-dollar legacy, the triumphs, and the occasional bumps in the road.
As the brand skyrocketed in the modern era, they did hit one really highly publicized hurdle. For years, Red Bull claimed it gave you wings, explicitly stating a can had about the same caffeine as a cup of coffee. But in 2014, an American guy named Benjamin Carruthers figured out this wasn't quite true. There was actually less caffeine, so he sued the company for false advertising, and the jury sided with him. Red Bull was forced to compensate American customers who bought the drink between 2002 and 2014. And in this incredibly cheeky move of malicious compliance, they simply altered their slogan, adding some extra I's to turn wings into wings. Problem solved.
But hey, despite that little bump in the road, the financial legacy of this partnership is just staggering. When Chaleo passed away in 2012, that former duck farmer was Thailand's third richest person, holding a net worth of $5 billion. And Dietrich Mateschitz? He became Austria's richest man, boasting a massive fortune of $13.4 billion. It really is an incredible testament to the immense power of this completely unlikely partnership between a rural farmer and a traveling salesman.
You know, if there's one core business lesson to take away from this whole explainer, it's this quote right here. If your gut feeling has something to tell you, it's good to pay some attention. Dietrich and Chaleo, they lacked encouraging data, they had zero proven market, and they even had focus groups actively telling them they were making a disgusting product. But they just knew what they had. They trusted their intuition, remembering that at the end of the day, consumers also make buying decisions with their guts.
We've covered a ton of ground today, from handing out free samples to truck drivers, all the way to jumping from the edge of space. So I want to leave you with this final thought to reflect on. Which of the duo's bold business moves did you actually find the most inspiring? Let that incredible journey, from a Thai duck farm to a global, multi-billion-dollar empire, really sink in. Keep learning, keep trusting your gut, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.